if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good evening, and welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. So, sorry about no episode last week. It's been kind of hectic, if I can be honest. Had a lot going on. And on top of that, we also had what happened today. We went out to the Tribeca Film Festival to try out some of the games that they have available. And we're going to talk about some of those. We're going to talk about Neva. We're going to talk about, which I probably should have asked how to pronounce, because I never did. It's Neva. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, what's the other really big one we have? There's another really big game that I was like, oh, that one's cool. Is the right street to turn on, right? Yep. Alright, I think I'm good. Sorry, I'm driving, as usual. And driving in Queens, so a little bit of a different experience from normal. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Skate Story. We're going to talk about this game Arranger that I didn't really have on my radar. And the other one that I wanted to talk about was darkwebSTREAMER. Let's start out with Skate Story, though. I played Skate Story briefly. This game, for those who don't know, is a new Devolver Digital game. You play as a skater who is in hell. You have to skate your way out of hell without crashing, and oh wait, one thing you have to keep in mind, you are made out of glass, so if you fall, you die, you gotta start over. It's about momentum, and this is kind of like, I'll describe it as like the Souls-like of skating games, because it's hard, punishingly hard, but at the same time, it is rewarding to complete. It feels like you're playing a Souls-like, and this is the game that I was the most frustrated while playing, because, as I'm playing it, I'm like, I'm making an ass of myself in front of other people, and I'm like, because I'm not great at this game, but I enjoyed it. I did very much enjoy my time with it. I think the controls are pretty solid. I like the way you have to, the way it feels differently from other skating games, where it's not just hit the button as you, and try to gauge how much time you have in the air to be able to land a trick. There are other parts to it that kind of go into that. I think that they do handle that pretty well, all things considered. The aesthetic is great. I do like, because again, you're in hell, which is, I feel like that kind of thing, the demonic is kind of a commonality among Souls-likes at this point, or that kind of game where, like, if it's going to be hard, you set the game in hell, and or with demons or something similar, and that's kind of what this is again, because you're in hell. And I do love the philosopher aspect, because like there's a thing we have to collect like think pieces, and to do that you have to complete little side missions to get them, and then you have to use them to unlock the next part, and that part really I really enjoyed too. I love the aesthetic of the glass against everything else is cool. I think that like at one point there's a rabbit that looks really good. I do like the way that contrasts kind of with the rest of the visual aesthetic. This is probably not my favorite game that I played, but I did really enjoy it. Then let's talk about Neva next, Neva. This is the next game from the studio behind Gris, which won Game of the Year a few years ago. For those who don't know, that's the game where you play as the woman going through this world, and it's meant to be a meditation on the stages of grief as you go through this world and move through the world. You end up, processing, and each section of it corresponds to a different thing, where it's like, there's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, this game we didn't get really deep enough, but I do think the combat, which is new to this compared to Gris, I don't recall having any combat mechanics. I think that is something that is very slick, and I think blends into the existing gameplay paradigm that we're familiar with from this studio pretty calmly, and not calmly, but pretty easily and organically. So I think that was something that worked very well for this. I also think that the other thing that really worked for it was what was the other big thing that I would like? The gameplay aesthetic. This feels like a step up from Gris. Not to say Gris looks bad, because I think Gris was visually striking, but this feels like an improvement on it in every way. Because the world is more detailed while maintaining that same kind of aesthetic that we would come to expect from this studio. What other notes did I have on this? I didn't take notes on my phone, I took notes on my hand for each of them on the train. Because the thing is, it's like I took the 7 back, and it was the fucking Mets were playing, so I wrote it on my hand. Ourselves fantastic combat. I would say this is when we talk about the iterative nature of video games, this kind of perfectly encapsulates that. It is, in every way, shape, and form, a drastic improvement over Gris, which is saying a lot, because I'm not saying Gris is bad. I'm saying that it's like having something really good and then getting something else after being holy fuck. It's kind of like the same way I felt seeing Dune Part 1 and then Dune Part 2. Where you see Dune Part 1, this is a great movie. Then you see Dune Part 2, you're like, holy fuck, did they step it up from the first one, which is not something I thought was possible. And that's kind of where I was with this. And good for that team for managing to pull that off. Then we have the next one we're going to talk about is Arranger, a puzzle-based RPG, or a puzzle RPG. I didn't write the full name. I know it's called Arranger. And this is something that I looked at the picture, because I looked at the website for Tribeca when I was making the decision to go, and I was looking at the picture, and I was like, okay, this looks kind of cute. Maybe I'll play around with it a little bit, and we'll see how it holds. But I did not anticipate this game being probably the standout for me from this event. I think that the gameplay aesthetic of Arranger is fantastic. I think it does, basically what it is it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, where you're in this dungeon, you're a hero, you have to move the puzzle around you have to move parts around on this grid it's kind of like Pokemon Trozy a little bit, where it's you slide sideways, you slide up and down. If you get to the top, you just cycle back to the bottom. So you have to move keys into locks, you have to move swords into monsters, and then you have to move your character through the world as you move these things around. And I think the puzzles are great. There's a lot of really great gameplay in this. I'll be curious when the game comes out as to if this manages to carry over into the full game, and if the full game, when it does finally come out, if it gets repetitive after a certain point, or if they manage to keep it fresh throughout the entire thing. Which is I would say a pretty big ask, but I think it's doable. But we'll see when the full game does come out. And the gameplay aesthetic is great. It's very cartoony and cute, and I think it handles that very well. This is definitely a game that it wasn't really on my radar, but now it is. It's very much something that I'm when this game comes out, I do need to play this game. Next up, we have darkwebSTREAMER, which I'm not a big horror fan. In general, if you've listened to Beware of Spoilers, you know that. My go-to is I'm historically a giant pussy when it comes to horror. I don't like it. I never really went in on Silent Hill. I never really went in on Resident Evil or any kind of horror games to begin with. But this is something where I was like, all right, let's check this out. This is kind of another puzzle game where you are it reminded me a lot of Last Call BBS, where you are playing, you are a streamer and you have to get people to watch you by browsing the dark web and getting people. It's not really the dark web. It's kind of like it's the game version of dark web, but you have to, get people to, follow you by doing weird occult stuff, which I think plays very well in the context of the game. And I think that it does a great job of building suspense. It's very atmospheric, and I do really appreciate what they managed to pull off in this too. Especially considering the art style is, I don't want to say limited, but it is a little bit like, not limited. Limited is the wrong word, but it is not simplistic either. But it's kind of black and white, and it's not exactly going deep on that, and for what it is, it has a very analog horror vibe to it. Like, I think the closest I would say is probably like Local 58, and what it reminded me a lot of Local 58, or what's that other one that Peter told me about, that I'm saying this out into the ether and no one knows the hell I'm talking about, but it kind of reminds me of that. And it does a great job of building tension, building horror, and this is a game that, again, didn't have high expectations for, because I hadn't really heard of it prior to this. But, here we are. And then that's another one. And the final one I want to talk about, this is another one that I didn't have a massive, expectation going into it. But thank goodness you're here. Which, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that looks kind of cute. Like, but, if we play it, we play it. If we don't, we don't. Thank goodness you're here is it's a puzzle game where you have to help people with odd jobs around this town in northern England to expand the map. And instantly this felt like Untitled Goose Game, but with a vibe that I can only describe as like, this feels like you're watching The Busy World of Richard Scarry, and the aesthetic feels like you're watching a cartoon. Like, even like the way the camera is held feels very unique. And that alone made this really stand out to me in a way that, a lot of games didn't. And that's one of the things I really liked about this event, was that we're talking about games that go unique in the art style and try to do new things with gameplay. And I think that's something that really shone through here with this one, where it's like, this one is another one like, what was the other one I said? Arranger, where it's like, because I went into it expecting very little, seeing what I got out of it, I was very much like, oh, this is something truly fantastic. Like, it exceeded all expectations because I had no expectations, but that feels kind of dismissive, but it's not how I mean it, if you get what I'm saying. But, I think this event is great. If you're in the New York area, I think it runs through the end of the day on Father's Day. So if you do have a chance to go try these games out, I would definitely recommend it. There was a reasonably sized crowd there, and you're at Pier 57, which is just a beautiful venue. To be able to talk about this venue, like, I walked in, I did not know what this place was going to be, and as I'm walking through, you have to walk through this like kind of like a food court area, but with high-end foods. And as I'm walking through, I'm like, God damn, something here smells so good. I need to get something to eat here. And then I saw the prices, and I was like, you know what? It smells good, not that good though. So we will, we will table that until we have more money in the future to do that. Especially because I had to buy a Father's Day gift while I was in the city. But look, this is something that I very much liked these games that I played, and I'm like, these are all games that have made the list as we go forward in the year for things that I want to see, that I want to, play and review as we go through. But we will wrap up there for today. Next week, we're going to have a little bit of a weird schedule. Tuesday, rather than our usual review of a Pokemon game, which would have been Dash this week, we missed last week. Rather than that, we're going to be doing a review of a new game that I don't think I can say what the game is yet. I've had it for review for a little bit, but the embargo doesn't lift until the 17th, so I don't want to risk saying the name of the game if I'm not allowed to say that I have the code yet. But the game comes out next week, so we have that. The week after, we have Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the Switch, and we are going to do late next week Pokemon Dash, and then we'll be back on track with that going forward. But we'll wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.